Hi everyone, how's it going? Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We're letting people shuffle in to the live stream, to the Zoom call. So if you're running across this on Facebook or YouTube, have a seat, spend the hour with us. It's going to be a fun hour. We're going to talk about music and the arts and a little bit about pianos. It's going to be fun. I'll introduce the program officially in a few moments. I'll introduce our guest for the day. We just kind of banter here for just a minute so that people can get settled when you have the live stream going out. If you are out there on Facebook and YouTube, keep an eye out for some links in the chat, and you can click those to join us actually directly in the Zoom call. You can kind of chat with the other viewers in there and get a little bit closer to the action. And that's always fun. And I'll give some more information here on the program, as I said momentarily. It's Piano Tech Radio Hour. And what we do here is we gather every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world. Includes manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. You can also subscribe to Radio Hour for just $16 a month and get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, as well as all the archival recordings of well over 200 episodes in our member area. You can join using the link bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. Of course, we always like to mention the podcast audio only version of the show, which we release on all major platforms that host podcasts. Listen to it while you're working, driving, in the workshop, and doing dishes, whatever you like to do. We are popular all over the globe in the performing arts category on iTunes. We've reached top 100, top 10, top number 1 in various locales all over the world, and proud to have a global audience for Piano Tech Radio Hour. And then, of course, check out the blog on Substack, where we highlight some of our masterclass content. We talk about very in-depth things about pianos that you're not going to find anywhere else. It could be the history of pianos, construction of pianos, design of pianos. And more and more, we're bringing in tangential content from folks like our radio, our guests. We might have a little masterclass on composition, or ways of practicing, or different techniques of specialization in the musical field. So keep an eye out on the Substack blog for more information on that. And then if you'd like it, you can dive deeper. And then we've got our socials: LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you want to get on the mailing list, just go to pianotechniciansmasterclass.com and enter your email and name, and that'll get you there. I would love to now introduce our guest. Kinan Azmeh is a critically acclaimed Syrian-born, Brooklyn-based clarinetist and composer, celebrated for his distinctive voice that seamlessly blends diverse musical genres, from contemporary classical to jazz and world music. Hailed as intensely soulful and a virtuoso by the New York Times, he has garnered international recognition through solo appearances and as a commissioned composer with leading orchestras worldwide, including New York Philharmonic. A graduate of Juilliard, Azmeh is also a prominent member of Yo-Yo Ma's Grammy Award-winning Silk Road Ensemble and leads his own Arab jazz quartet City Band. His compositions span orchestral, chamber, film, and electronic music, often exploring themes of identity and home. Kinan, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great.
Actually, your introduction is a bit scary because I thought, oh boy, am I in the wrong room? I mean, because you mentioned the word piano tech, and I thought, I was expecting you to welcome me like, and now we have this wonderful pianist or piano technician. I'm like, hey guys, I'm not what you expect me to be. But thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is fully honest. We started this show back during the pandemic for all the piano technicians that were cowering in their homes, wondering if their life is over because they can't go do their jobs. And we started out with like technical content for piano technicians. And as I alluded to earlier before we started the program with you, I'm interested in all sorts of things from, you know, music to the sciences. I've got a PhD in biology where I study neuroscience. I'm an entrepreneur, and you know, I love to just talk to lots of different people. So we we
Cool.
we we just make it a little broader, and it's been actually really fun and fine. And there's always some sort of a connection, right? So you're a
Absolutely.
musician, you're in New York City. Yeah, I'm sure you played a piano here and there. You probably at least had to learn a few
True.
chords
That
and
is true.
melodies in your time.
Absolutely. That's true.
Do you own a piano? Have you ever owned a piano? I'm guessing you own a keyboard. You probably got something for
We
what's.
actually own few keyboards. Just, I mean, for composing, you need it. I used to actually work with a very, very small like MIDI controller. For me, that was enough. But then every time I would go to somebody's house and people have a grand piano,
Mhm.
you realize like a total different kind of creativity appears the moment you play on a real instrument,
Yeah. Yeah.
And whether it's an upright all the way to like a baby grand or like a concert grand, and then you do end up composing different stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also you get fooled by thinking that your playing is also good. I can play little things on the piano, but I just use it to compose my own music, but nothing
Mhm.
more. But so we do have one of these electronic pianos. So it's an upright, but it's fully electronic, weighted keys and everything, and
Mhm.
it does the job.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's something very organic about sidling up to a piano and sitting on the bench and poking the keys a little bit, and um, that can happen at an electric piano, but it's just not as organic. It doesn't feel as kind of uh I guess I can only say the word organic again. But yeah,
right.
there's something about sitting down at an acoustic instrument and you get the character that comes out, right? Oh, that note's a little bit out of tune, but it's kind of nice to hear it a little bit. It's like I like how it's a little bit, it's a
No,
little
but
bit
I mean, it's
unique.
also because it's unique to the piano. I cannot think of any other instrument that you just can walk up to and play something, even if you have never touched the instrument. You can
Hmm.
play, one
It's
note that
keys.
is almost as good as a professional pianist will make, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And
Just
so
press
there's
the
like an
buttons.
immediate satisfaction that comes right from the get-go. But if you're used to also to playing, lots of keyboards, the moment you hit a grand piano, realize the way of the keys, the way how the whole room vibrates with you. It's and I'm a wind player, so for me it's just like crossing a whole ocean, to just do that and press your, play a chord. For me is something that I don't get to do when I'm playing my own instrument as a
Hmm.
clarinetist.
Hmm. I can't help but continue to notice these instruments on your wall there. I'm assuming
Oh yeah.
they they may have at least one of those seems like it must have some connection to Syria, if not all of them. Um,
Actually, I don't know which corner you see because there's this corner.
oh yeah,
There are lots of wind instruments.
I didn't actually see those. I see the stringed instruments. Now I see the
There,
woodwind instruments, yeah, like flutes and things.
these I have collected actually over the years. There are flutes from where is that from Colombia, some Chinese flutes, Syrian ones, Egyptian ones, probably Indian ones, Indonesian one, Armenian one, French
Hmm.
wooden saxophone. And
Hmm.
here there are actually string instruments. There's a mandolin, and there's a buzo, which is like the top, very uh, ornamented one. There's a Kurdish tambour, and this little Chinese little instrument, which is on the bottom. I've been collecting instruments for some time. I travel a lot, as a touring musician,
Hmm.
and it wasn't a plan to collect instruments, but I'm fascinated by sounds, and I'm fascinated how instruments have unique shapes everywhere they go. Like the different sizes and everything. So our home is becoming little by little a little museum of instruments, and we have lots of percussion instruments also. I mean, yes, they're hanging on the walls, but I use these very, very often.
You do? Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
curious if it was just
I'm trying.
following it.
No, 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 no. I try to learn them. With wind instruments, it's not as easy because you have to have the right amount of them, the right reeds. Sometimes some reeds you cannot find here in New York, so it's a process. But learning how the instruments sound, again, it's a challenge that you don't have with the piano. Is an exciting one. How can I produce a sound on this piece of wood and you know
So tell me why the clarinet for you? Was that your first instrument?
no,
How
no,
old were you when you picked it up?
my first instrument was the violin. My parents, when I was maybe 5, and my sister, actually maybe even younger, maybe 4, and my sister was 7. When my parents thought that it would be good for us to have some music lessons, I don't think my parents thought that I would become a professional musician anyway. But and my dad played the violin on an amateur level, so he thought maybe violin would be a good idea, And so they got me a small tiny violin, and that was not a very successful experiment because when you start learning the violin, one of the first things you do is you hold the bow and just move the bow across the strings. And as a left-handed kid, that was like torture for me. I was not able to control my right hand at all, and I tried that for about a year. But I remember very vividly how miserable I felt every time the violin lesson was about to begin, and also during the violin lesson. My parents owned the full volume of the Britannica, of the encyclopedia, and my dad wrote to them. This is in the early 80s. He wrote to them, "My son is trying to learn the violin. Do you have any suggestions?" This is pre-internet, pre any of that knowledge that we have access to today. And they responded a few months later. The whole Encyclopedia Britannica gathered basically a bunch of articles discussing my case and sent it to my dad. And one of the suggestions they had is either to find a left-handed violinist that I can learn from, so somebody who can relate to the challenges I have, or switching the strings on the instrument so I can play with my left hand, which would rule out any possibility of me playing in an orchestra because I'll be the only one who's going opposite directions.
Right.
And the third option was, why don't your kids switch to an even-handed instrument? And the only two options that were present at the time in Damascus, where I grew up, was either the clarinet or the piano. And as a young child, I thought I would go with a lighter instrument. For me, being a musician meant traveling, and I wanted to travel with a lighter instrument. That was how deep and profound was my choices. Okay, I'm gonna take the instrument I can carry with me.
I mean,
so
it helps,
the
that's for
clarinet,
sure.
yeah. So the clarinet was the choice.
And how old were you at that point?
I think 6, maybe.
Wow. And you
Yeah.
thought of musicians as traveling. That's interesting.
Actually, it's hard to tell at a certain point where, especially if you grow up very close to a group of people, such as, we were a very close friends, my parents and I, and we are now, but back in the day, it's hard to know if that's something that I thought or something they told me to convince me, and then I just adopted, that narrative.
Yeah. Okay.
But for me, I just remember okay, I'm taking this because I can take it camping with me, and camping was a big thing in my life at age 6. It's not that I went camping often, but for me, it was
right. It was
a cool thing. What cool people do. Yeah. And
that's great.
And I think also we had the harmonica also at home that my dad used to play, and for me, it's an instrument that fits in a backpack was a go-to solution. So
yeah,
so the clarinet was true.
No, they're also nice because you can disassemble them, and it's
right.
You also
it's
you
a
have
very
to carry
small
the
case.
longer version of it. You can just kind of that's
right.
also true.
And also, what helped is my cousin, who's 2 years older than I am. He's the person who taught me how to play soccer, and he was the cool older kid, and he played clarinet. So also he had some influence uh, in me choosing the instrument, I think.
Mm. I would love to just go on a little tangent here because you raised an interesting uh, concept in my mind. You had mentioned to me previously you have a child, like 4-year-old, and of course you're in Brooklyn. What part of Brooklyn are you?
Park Slope.
Park Slope.
Mhm.
And so you're raising the kid in Brooklyn and Manhattan, in the 2020s, and then you were a kid growing up in Syria
Mhm.
in the 80s, it sounds like. uh Compare and contrast, you can't really tell us about. I can tell us about the United States in the 80s, but you can't.
Mhm.
But I'm just curious, it's I don't have a clear picture of what life was like camping. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, camping. Like I think of camping like, I'm from Michigan and you got forests nearby and you go camping. And for some reason, I wasn't imagining what camping I don't know why as a kid in Syria, but I guess it makes sense. And I don't know what the camping's like. Is it in, do you go out in desert areas? Do you go out in forested areas? Is it mountains?
I
Just tell
mean,
me. I'm just
all
curious. You're
all of the above.
all the
I,
above.
I
Okay.
think I think I think the question raises a good point.
Yeah.
We tend, I think all of us humans do that. We tend to think that our reality is the only reality that is out there. Like, your memory of your first music lesson, you think like, yeah, everybody else went through the same thing. Or, the fact that you love nature so much, you think that everybody else loved nature until
Mhm.
you start going to school and you raise, some more awareness about your surrounding, and you realize that people have different backgrounds and different things. And for me, I mean, I don't think there's a unified experience growing up, even in the US in the 80s. And
Oh yeah. No.
certainly it's not a unified experience growing up in Syria in the 80s as well.
Mhm.
Uh, I was born to a family that was very much interested in culture.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I'm very lucky in that sense. And also a family, like middle class family, who actually was willing to spend money to teach me music or to send me to music classes, right? Or to buy me an instrument. Uh, a family who didn't think playing the music is a waste of time and that I should just focus on my homework. And this is not a unified experience. It's not across the board. But like, for example, going camping in Syria, I mean, many kids did it, but also it depends where they are in the country. For me, I used to go, like there's a green belt that surrounds Damascus, for example. We used to go and camp sometimes there. Sometimes we go to the mountains on the coastal line, gorgeous forests, and we just camp for. And this is when I was a bit older. But also, I've done some campings when you go east to more of a desert line, and I've done that too. And we hitchhike around the country. The country is big, but it's of course very small in relation to the US. You cross the whole country, I think it's a 9 or 10 hour drive from the two furthest points. But yeah, so my growing up in Syria for me was a very like a uniquely mine kind of experience. Um, but other kids did other activities too. So I mean, I guess I'm telling you all of this because I don't want people to just take me as a representative of what
Oh
growing up
no,
as a Syrian
absolutely not.
is.
No, I'm well. And
And
actually, I'm not. That's even part of what I'm thinking is I'm in some ways I'm guessing you didn't necessarily have the typical, whatever. You have your unique experience, but I was just most curious about it. I mean, just generally, not everybody's dad calls the Encyclopedia Britannica to try to figure out what
no,
the.
no, absolutely. I mean, it's a unique, very unique situation. That's very true. That's very true. And no, I mean that's why I feel incredibly lucky to be born in this kind of setup. And also, learning music, like the music that I learned, like Bach, Brahms, Beethoven, and Mozart, which I learned in Damascus. I grew up believing like this music is mine. Like this is my culture too.
Hmm.
And walking around the streets in Damascus, you hear lots of music from Arabic music, Armenian music, Kurdish music, ancient Syriac music, uh, which is sung in Aramaic, which is still spoken in Syria until today.
Mm.
So multiculturalism is something that I grew up in somehow.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I lived a happy childhood, a safe and happy childhood. I would maybe describe it also as being sheltered a little bit. Um, but I was very much in touch with nature. Nature was a big part of my life, and I think it's because it was a big part of my parents' life and also my grandparents' life. So nature, the whole vertical connection with nature and what that means, and how you contribute to nature, how you protect nature, how you harvest, how you plant, all of the like I knew exactly the season to do what and when expect this fruit and not the other fruit. Uh, that was in my background the whole time.
Mm.
And
That's
I'm
great.
sure it is actually for many, it intersects with lots of, an American kid growing up in the 80s, people who lived near a farm, or maybe not somebody's experience who's born in the,
Well, it's hard.
Midtown New York City.
Yes,
I don't
it's hard
know.
to grow up with that experience in New York.
But
I
but
had a
sorry, just like a quick thought. Uh, because during COVID is when my wife and I moved to an apartment in Brooklyn that had a little backyard. And it was the first time that I dug into the soil of the city. Actually, and it was it was shocking for me to realize that the city has soil where you can plant something in. You don't think of New York as a place where
concrete
you can
jungle.
like plant something.
No, yeah, maybe a little community garden here and there. Yeah, but yeah, no, it's like rooftop gardens, right? Like that. That's what we're looking at.
Right.
Um, I had one piano tuning client actually there in Brooklyn, and he was kind of like an athletic trainer. He did some private training, and he would tell me about his clients a little bit. Number one, he had a treadmill in his home that he had trained his dog to run on, so that the dog could get exercise. And he told me about this one. He said, "Oh, I love training everyone from my dog to whoever." He says, "There's a family that I work with where I train like everybody from like the grandma to like the 8-year-old or whatever." And and I was like, "What do you do with the kid?" And he's like, "Well, it's not that complicated. Like we do some sort of sophisticated routine, but." I take him to the park so he can learn how to ride his bike.
Right.
And I just thought, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a place, it was relatively rural where a kid could just go out right outside the front door and start riding the bike around, and nobody's gonna hit him with a car or anything. And you can just kind of do it however you like. In New York, if you want to learn how to even ride a bike, teach a kid how to ride a bike, you gotta take the bike out of the
Of
storage
course.
unit or something, and then you gotta bring it on the subway over to the park, and like it's just a whole ordeal just to learn
It's
how to ride a bike in New York City.
you're absolutely right. And I think again, actually back to the comparison between Damascus and New York. I grew up with that very safe situation that the city offered. Damascus is not a small city. It's 4 million people plus, which makes it
Yeah.
like a big city. But I mean, maybe safety measures were different back then. Like I used to go and bike like on the highway.
Mm.
My parents didn't worry. I was not wearing a helmet, and we'll go like against traffic, and it's a different time. I think what actually makes the cities, both New York and Damascus, closer to each other is how, because that generation, I think we grew up with very, I mean, things have changed when it comes to like safety and stuff in the last 30 years. That may be more than it's ever changed from the 80s earlier. So that's what's in common between maybe you and I and somebody who grew up in New York is we were, people managed to like ride the bike in the streets of New York in the 80s. Maybe it was fine.
Mm.
You just
Yeah.
open the door, like
Right, right.
just. do it.
Just go for it.
But now I cannot imagine my son like, stepping out of the apartment, just like going on his own on the bike. There's no
No,
way.
no. Well, I would love to check out some of your music. We have a, a sort of performance that has been recorded and on YouTube here from the Five Boroughs event here. Should we check out the final
Check out
track
the
in it?
final track because that's maybe the oldest track on this concert, and
Okay.
it's the last track on my album that I just released
Okay.
called Live in Berlin. And
Okay.
you'll see the band. This is my New York family playing here. Kyle San on
Okay.
guitar, Josh Myers on bass, and John Hatfield on drums. And this is actually part of the Five Boroughs Music Festival. And it happened very appropriately at the Five Boroughs Brewery in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
And that's why you see the barrels behind us, just that if people were wondering.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Where in Brooklyn is the Five Boroughs brewery? What area is
Uh,
that?
Actually, I don't remember. This is
Okay.
a
All
bunch
right.
of years back, but
Okay. All right, let's try to shift it to where it begins. So this is wedding, yeah?
yeah.
Oops. No. All right, we'll pause there.
Right.
Wonderful. Yeah, so this definitely feels like this is a composition of yours, and it feels both unique and familiar. I guess that makes sense for a composition. I'm guessing there's some connection to what it feels like at a wedding for you. Yeah? I mean, is that where does the title
I
come
mean,
from?
the part we heard so far is basically just like a little
Snippet.
intro.
So
I mean,
longer. Yeah, okay.
the math part happens much, much, much later,
Okay, okay.
and the piece is inspired by the communal feeling of excitement that people have in a public wedding. What I mean by a public wedding, wedding in the village, in a Syrian village where people just gather. And I always like to joke on stage that it's a piece that is inspired by when in a village wedding, you have to invite everybody from that village. Even if you don't like your neighbor, they have to be there.
Yeah.
And the musicians show up and the musicians play whatever they like to play. And so the piece tried to capture that
Okay.
mood.
Yeah.
And it's been an ending classic, like a classic ending for all our shows since 20 years now.
It's not always as much for the bride and groom as you might think, right? It's for everybody else, right? And it might be for your neighbor who you know you're not that excited about, but they're like, oh, there's going to be a wedding. I've got, they have some of the food and have the party, or
Right,
whatever.
right, right, right.
It's for they're enjoying. They want to enjoy, the fact that you've given them a reason to
I
celebrate.
mean, I hope there's a culture now where people actually bring back the focus in a wedding party to the host of the party, you know, where
Oh
it's
yeah,
just
I
not
don't know.
about like just pleasing everybody, but like when my wife and I got married, for us, that was our number one goal. We want to host a party that we would enjoy being at.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
the only parameter. And actually, for musicians, actually, it's fun. My wife is also a violinist and a composer, and we played in our wedding. And like the first
Oh,
time we
that's
played
great.
together publicly was at our wedding. So
Okay,
you turn it into a concert where it's more fun.
that's cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah.
I love it. Families that have music integrated.
Right.
Um, so tell me about being, the shift in location here. So you lived most of your early life in Syria, and then at some point you ended up over here. What was the transition period like? Was it to study?
To study, yeah, I did my undergrad in Damascus. I did first music school before high school finished, and then after high school, I was doing the Higher Institute of Music in Damascus. That's for my bachelor in music. But also, I went to the University of Damascus to study engineering. I have a degree in electronics. And then when I finished from both, and I was 24 at that time, I wanted to pursue my higher education. So I wanted to get my master's. And I thought, okay, this is where my choices became clearer, and I wanted to do music only. And I came to New York. Actually, I went to Boston for 1 year, and that's 2000. And then 2001, I transferred to New York, and I went to Juilliard for my master's, and then I did my doctorate at the Grad Center, City University of New York, where I got my doctorate degree. But the transition period, what was interesting, Boston was this 1 year that I did in Boston was transitional. In a sense, it's a new place, but I've been to Boston before when I was 16 for a little trip. Um, I didn't feel I had to like adjust anything, to be honest. It was just like, yeah, new city, great. But the bigger adjustment I had to work with is when I moved to New York, which was a much bigger city than Boston, and I moved to New York a week before 9/11 happened. So that was, I guess, a major point in the world also, not only for my life, but
Wow.
but
Yeah.
also being the Arab in New
Oh
York
my
at
gosh.
that moment was not easy.
No.
I'm suddenly the other, and also all these governmental procedures that were implemented where it was weird to speak Arabic, which is my native tongue in the streets of New York. But also, it was a time where I was welcomed the most in New York. It's interesting how things go. The city welcomed me with open arms. Both the school, the student house where I was living, called International House, and my friends who are the musicians of the scene. Everybody was super nice, and I think when 9/11 happened, I think also it brought the city together in a wonderful way too, that included me, which was very meaningful. So I never felt I never thought of I think it was a state of mind because I never thought that I was moving to New York. I came to New York to study. It was a plan to be here for 2 or 3 years, and here I am 25 years later. I'm still in New York City. So So there was no transition because it wasn't that I have to adjust to a new reality, you know? It's I kept an active connection with home. And now I do think of both Damascus and New York as being my home cities, and I love that.
Hmm. Um, yeah, I was going to ask you that question, but you kind of answered. Whether you want to stay there, how that all evolved, and it's kind of like a lo and behold type of thing. And you definitely have that New York vibe, right? It's like you can have people from all over the world, and once they get themselves in they have their little niche, in New York, and you're like, okay, you're a New Yorker now. Something happens,
You know,
some switch flips.
I'm always like questioning what is that niche though? You know, is it I think the only niche I can think about is the openness and the place that allows you to think freely is the niche that I look for and I belong to, you know?
Sure.
And also the city, the main contrast for me when I'm in Damascus versus when I'm in New York. In Damascus, like people know me, I know people, there's that familiarity with the place. New York, no matter how much you live in New York, you can be nobody at all times if you decide to, There's always a total new audience to explore, a total new neighborhood to find out, and uh, and I love that. So it's a niche of the unknown is what excites me about New York, and also it's a city where there's an audience for anything and everything, and I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. One thing I say about New York, is that, the nice thing about, New York is like nobody cares, you get to be whoever you want to be, and people, they don't care. But then the other side of it is they don't care.
That's true.
Be who you are over there, and I'm fine. Just go ahead. I don't need it.
No, you're right.
Uh, yeah, but
Excuse me. Yeah, and I think it's. I mean, maybe one of the reasons is because everybody's equally crushed by the city, so it creates some kind of solidarity among everybody, and uh, and I think that makes people also kind. People do help each other. It is not really in line with the reputation of the city, but I find lots of kind and nice people and gentle in New York City. I
yeah,
mean,
there was
yeah. I mean, it's not that I'm biased towards New York City, but it's a city that I know the most now,
yeah, yeah. I think there was a lot of talk about there being a bit of a shift around 9/11. That all of a sudden people were being more, friendly and helpful towards each other. Post the crisis of that. But uh, but yeah, it's a great place. But yeah, if you don't have a niche, then you'll get chewed up and spit out.
Right.
You'll find out if you're a New Yorker or not.
Right.
I feel like let's return to this recording here and let's go towards the end of that track so we can hear where it goes. Does that sound kind of fun?
Sounds good. Yep.
Okay, cool. There's that. And we'll maximize. So here we go. Is that the very end?
It's a good place to start.
It is. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's always fun to play with these guys. And John Hatfield is a killer drummer. Cal San, a wonderful guitarist. Josh Myers, incredible bassist. And they all have their own, own creative hats too. Kyle, for example, Kyle wrote me a concerto uh, recently that we're recording with a nice orchestra in New York. And John and I have toured a lot also together as a duo. And so there's lots of, kind of like some kind of collaboration between the band, not only among the four of us, but also with other groups. And, again, that's my family in New York. We've been playing for 20 years. So
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And tell us about, because we won't have a chance to listen to the breadth of every type of music that you're making, but how much are you overlapping, for example, with the sort of jazz, crowd, or, and like I was trying to think about these musicians, like they seem like guys who are maybe playing maybe a few different genres, right? And I
Mhm.
think part of what I was wondering is I can't tell if any of them has any background in Syrian music, naturally. But it
Not
seems
not
like,
really, not really.
yeah.
But I mean, everybody's open, and I think also that's a
Yeah.
music skill that you work you develop by collaborating,
Hmm.
and the city has lots of collaborators, everywhere you go, and the music I write is inspired by a multitude of traditions without being limited by any. That's the way I like to describe it.
Hmm.
So there's, of course, the music of Syria, whatever that means, because also it's a very complex term, uh, because it embodies, traditions from Arabic music, Kurdish music, Armenian music, whatever Syria hosts in terms of communities. But also, it's inspired by jazz. I've been living in New York for the last 35 years, so it's only natural. But also, there's some pieces where you see more my classical background as somebody who grew up playing Bach, Brahms, and Beethoven. But that's only one hat of what I wear. One of my hats. The other one, I do lots of solo appearances with orchestras that I write the music for. Also, I've composed an opera. If you just write, my name and just write opera, you'll see my opera called I have only one opera right now called Songs for Days to Come, and it was premiered in Germany about 3 years ago. And I've written pieces for the New York Phil, for the Seattle Symphony, so like this video is just one aspect of what I do, but it's an inspiring aspect because the band has been my musical lab too. I always bring sketches of pieces that I'm going to write for orchestras. I bring it to the band to test it, and to see what's possible. Yeah.
I'm curious, having again left your home country and finding yourself here after 25 years. How much is there a connection that you found? Because in New York, you can find it, a connection with people of the same ethnic background or the same nationality. Or is that, you just kind of hang with whoever you hang with,
It, it's a it's a great question. Because when I left Damascus, like I told you, I was not imagining myself leaving. I was just going on a 2 year trip just to do my master's. Uh, and so and then when I realized like I want to stay longer, I wanted to study longer, I became obsessed with not wanting to become an expatriate. So I kept a very active connection with home with Syria all these years. I used to go very, very often, almost like 3 or 4 times a year, just to go and play. Any possibilities for me to play in Syria, I used to take. And that stopped in 2012 because of the war that happened, and I didn't want to be part of that system, under the dictatorship, blah blah blah. So I stopped playing for 14 years. Uh, but I still don't consider myself that I left Syria, believe it or not. After all these years, I feel I'm equally present in both places. I just started to play again in Syria a couple of months ago, and the selection of friends that I have around me, like I mean, I didn't come to New York to just hang out with the other Arabs, you know. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's everybody in the city. I want to meet everybody. I want to connect with everybody. Naturally, of course, you are drawn towards people who are worried about the same topics and who feel passionately about certain topics. And that's again, it's the nature of human beings. But I try to think of New York not as just the pockets of immigrants, but rather a wonderful collage of human experiences that if you just go to the bar downstairs, you're able to meet somebody that you maybe never dreamt of meeting in your life. And I love that aspect. So, I mean, I have lots of friends who are Arabic speaking friends, but my circle is not limited to that.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I love that. Yeah, I try to think about what it's like living. I lived in Peru for about a year and a half at one point, and I have to say there was a natural gravitation towards, well, there was natural gravitation towards just travelers in general in the city that I was in. You know, other people that are going on trips, or they're not there. They could be from Ireland or, you know, Germany or whatever. But yeah, I think there's a little bit of a gravitation just because it's something familiar. When they speak your language, you know, it's you don't have to work so hard to. It could be hard. I don't know how your English has been your whole life, but it could be just very taxing to speak in another language that is not your primary language, and that's just like it's exhausting, you know, if that's just even if you're pretty good at it.
Right, right. You know that the thing is, I think it's about um I mean, you have to believe I don't know how to put this. You have to find the ways to be the best version of yourself, you know, with the language you speak. Like when I speak in English, I know my limitations. I know what I like that doesn't work very well, and I know what things that work well. With Arabic, which is my mother tongue, I have the same issues, but in different places. And but the moment you start to speak several languages, you become less and less the outsider. You are able to dig more vertically into people's, you know, minds and people's cultures and everything. And for me, one of the reasons when I moved to New York is I didn't want to be limited by a certain circle. I didn't want to be grouped by being the outsider because politically that's what I'm grouped often. You know, you are the outsiders who need visas to come into certain countries, you know. And also I used to go very often to Syria. So the fact that I meet another Syrian, being a Syrian or an Arab is not enough of a reason for that person to become my best friend, you know? Actually, what you think about the world, about politics, about justice, about the environment, that's what makes you my friend or not, you know? Your just background is, for me, is totally irrelevant. But what you do with this background and how you're thinking forward in your life is what makes me like choose a friend. And New York, I mean, has such an unlimited supply of wonderful souls that are come in the city. Few of them stay post 10 years of New York, and that's when you become a New Yorker. Usually, is when you know it's time to leave. And actually, interesting enough, like most of my friends who I have in New York actually are people who have lived around the same time that I did. So people who have been in the city for 24 to 25 years.
Yeah. It's probably one of those things where you everybody's looking for new friends at the same time, right? Like there is that human, there's the aspect of being human where people get their friends and they're like, oh, I don't want to work to find new friends. I'm done.
Right.
It's probably a little bit of that.
But then your kid happens, and then you discover like this total other friends who are actually the you know the parents of your kids' friends. And you realize, oh, there's still actually so much room for new friends in your life. It's wonderful how that works.
Yeah. Before we start to wrap up here, one last question. You mentioned your son. Tell me about, you know, he's only about 4, but how music is affecting his life, how culture is affecting his life. Is your partner is Syrian and you met her in New York, or what? How does that?
No, my partner is French Lebanese.
Oh,
And
okay.
we met actually in Jordan and Palestine during a tour with the Palestine National Symphony,
Oh,
which both of
okay.
us were invited as guests, and we did a concert in Ramallah and in Amman in 2012, and then another concert in Indonesia in Jakarta in 2013. That's how we got to know each other well. And so at home we speak three languages: Arabic, French, and English. And my son is fluent in Arabic and English. He understands French, but he doesn't use it yet. Um, he's very comfortable in the musical industry setup. He's very comfortable in any backstage you put him at. He's like totally fine. Socially, I think. I mean, we're happy because we take him with us because we don't have a support system here in New York. We're on our own. So every time we have a concert, and we're traveling together, he stays backstage with somebody, or with one of us, or with somebody, and he's very comfortable being surrounded by musicians and people with instruments. He plays a little bit the piano. I mean, little bit. He just like throws his hands on the piano. He loves xylophone, and we discovered about a year and a half that he has perfect pitch, which was very nice to discover. And he has it. We haven't found meaningful ways to use it, but starting September, we're gonna send him to like music school, uh, you know, like twice a week kind of lessons, just to see. We don't want to force him to become a musician. Of course, he can be whatever he wants to be, but I want him to have that window of pleasure in his life the same way we have it because of music.
Yeah, it's wonderful when you can just, I mean, for some people, they have to work so hard to bring music into their children's life. They don't know anything about music. They don't know how practicing works. They try to get them lessons and, you know, take them to events, whatever. And some people just don't have that background, but they long to. And so it's wonderful if you have it. And again, our children always surprise us. They aren't always into the same things we are or what we like, but it's great. You have that and he can have that bed and it sounds like he's got some interest in it, so that's
But
wonderful.
but you continue to wonder, like, am I doing the right thing or not? It's
Oh
not
yeah, you're always
the
doing the
fact that
wrong
we've
things.
done it.
Doing
We
the
don't.
wrong
I
things,
don't
don't
know if
worry about
it's
it.
true. Yeah,
It's all wrong.
it's like trial and error. That's what's happening. But
Yeah,
I just hope that he loves music for me. It's not, and I want him to love music. I want him to love people and to, love the world and nature. Like, these are the basic things. How he's gonna learn this, I think we have to simply do it, and then he will see how it's done.
exactly. All right, we're gonna wrap up here momentarily. Is there anything you want to share uh as your kind of final share, share website or social medias or concert or words of wisdom or anything like that?
Words of wisdom. Oh boy, I don't have any words of wisdom. But my wisdom usually is shared with my music. So if you are, I mean, my calendar is always on my website, kinanazmeh.com. I'm now on tour with like lots of different projects. So come and, I mean, I'm touring actually a lot in the US and Canada in the coming few months. Sometime with orchestras and sometime with my city band, which is the one that we just played the video of. We released a new album called Live in Berlin, which we're very happy about, and it's on every single platform. Check it out. It's a live recording, and we're very proud of it because it's a celebration of friendship between the four band members in the group. What else? Last words. I'm just thankful for you hosting me and having this conversation, and keep doing that, man. It's great.
Wonderful. Okay, we have reached the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks again to Kinan for joining us today. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. For those of you that joined us today by signing up for the session individually, make your life more convenient. Subscribe to Piano Tech Radio. It's just $16 a month. You'll get the recording of today's session in our member area, as well as automatic registration for each week's new session. Sign up at bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. Don't forget about the podcast and the blog and the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And make sure to sign up for the email list on the website. All right. We'll see you all again next